Welcome to Inclusive Academia's deep dive into the On Your Marq program at Marquette University with the program's director, Emily Raclaw. Can you please tell us a bit more about yourself, Emily?
I'm Emily Raclaw. I'm the director of On Your Marq here at Marquette University in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I've been doing this job since the fall of 2019 when the program started. And I'm really proud of how much we've been able to develop the program. Outside of that, I'm a neurodivergent person myself. My background is in educational psychology, special education, and vocational rehabilitation.
Could you please tell us a bit more about Marquette and the surrounding city of Milwaukee?
Marquette's a mid-sized university in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, where my hometown is, so I'm a big fan of Milwaukee. Our class sizes are pretty mid-size, so average class size of about 25 to 30. I think our bigger lectures maybe about 50 for like those bio 1001, but smaller breakout sections for discussion and lab. I think we also have a really thriving community where students have all kinds of activities they can engage in. It's called Campus Activity Board. Every Thursday, Friday, and Saturday nights, there's activities for students to do on campus. And we have a really great rec program. And of course, Marquette basketball is life on campus. I could talk about Milwaukee for hours. What I love about Milwaukee is it has a lot of the same things that Chicago has on just a slightly smaller scale. We've got good theater. I'm a theater nerd. Sports, aside from Marquette sports, we've got Milwaukee Bucks, we've got baseball, we've got everything. We don't have football, but that's what the Green Bay Packers are for. Everything on campus is kind of in the middle of the city. So there's things that like downtown isn't very far away. Also, if you want to go out to the suburbs, there's things there. There's little smaller villages nearby. We also have a really great, we're not right on, but we're very close to Lake Michigan. We also have some urban forestry with the Urban Ecology Center. So just lots of different activities. Milwaukee really is a thriving kind of small city, mid-sized city maybe.
Now, can you give us a bit more background information about the On Your Marq program?
So we started in the fall of 2019, just in time for the pandemic to come in the spring of 2020. We started with just doing executive functioning coaching and peer mentoring. And as I took over the program with my background as a licensed professional counselor and a certified rehabilitation counselor, I really saw a need to add in some more formal social / mental health and wellness supports. So our approach is really to support the whole student, not just from an executive functioning standpoint, not just from a social standpoint, but also including that mental health and wellness that really brings the whole student in line with the Jesuit principles of cura personalis.
What are some of your goals for the program?
While all programs, we want our students to graduate, my number one goal is to have students graduate with employment or admission to graduate school, whatever their path may be. I think that graduation is just the first step in life, and given the unemployment rate among neurodivergent individuals, really focusing on being career ready when you graduate is key to our program.
And approximately how large is Marquette and how large is the On Your Marq program?
Okay, so Marquette's undergraduate population in fall of 2023 was 7,652. Our total enrollment, including graduate and professional students, is about 11,000. And we'll have 60 students in On Your Marq next fall. Our intent is to try to stay between 60 and maybe 80 students at most, mostly because something I'm really passionate about is being really involved in the program as director. So being available to students outside of appointment time, outside of just kind of being the face that talks to everybody. So I want to be able to be that advocate on campus while also still having a very personalized touch, and parents know that I'm with their student and students knows that I'm someone they can count on as well.
Can you tell us more about the On Your Marq staff?
So we are growing our professional staff right now. So we have a coordinator. She's also a licensed professional counselor. Her name is Heidi Stuckey. She's amazing. And then we also are growing our staff to include professional executive functioning coaches. And then we are also staffed by clinical mental health counseling master's degree interns. That is a mouthful. But basically those interns help provide our mental health and wellness and our direct social supports. In addition to that, we have peer mentors who do kind of that more loose social structure of hanging out with students that doesn't feel quite as forced, but also gets them connected to campus. I did not go to school here, so I don't know how to do laundry on campus. So that's what our peer mentors can kind of help students navigate. I also don't know where the best places to eat on campus are. That's what our peer mentors do. We do have our social events. The adultier adults, as I call us, aren't involved because we want that to be very peer driven. And then in addition to our peer mentors, our students have access to tutoring one-on-one, or also we have drop-in tutoring available with our study tables. So our peer mentors doing all the informal social supports, and then also the academic supports outside of executive functioning are one-on-one tutoring. While Marquette does have group tutoring included in tuition, we found that some students really just want someone to either auditorily process things with, or they want to just have someone to ask very specific questions to, and doing that in a one-on-one setting is much more beneficial.
So how do most of your students find On Your Marq?
So there's multiple ways that students find our program. The first one is that students find out about Marquette, and then they find out about On Your Marq in that process of searching because they are deliberately looking for schools with support. Another way people do is they come to Marquette, they get in, and then they find out and they go, oh, this program sounds great. And then they'll come in. There are some students who even have gone to school for a semester or a year, and turns out, okay, I might need some more support. It's more of a struggle than I thought, and they get connected that way.
Can you please describe the typical On Your Marq student profile?
Our typical students they have to get into Marquette first, just like any other student. Most of our students are pretty high achieving. So they would fall into that twice exceptional category of being gifted and also having a disability. I would say the vast majority of our students are a combination of ADHD and autistic. Some are just ADHD, but I think the vast majority is kind of a combo. We're kind of seeing and also big overlap of anxiety and ADHD students that we're working with, and a few that don't fall into either of those categories.
Which students tend to thrive with the support of your program?
The best kind of student that we can support is students who genuinely want to be in the program. So students who are coming and they're going to their appointments, they're engaging in those services, they are giving feedback, they're trying the strategies we're talking about, and then coming back and saying, yes, this worked really well, or this didn't work really well. So the students who generally want to be engaged and want the services and have the level of independence to come to us, even if outside their appointments, if they need that.
What does the application process for On Your Marq entail?
The application process is pretty simple. The first thing is, while you're waiting for your admission to Marquette, you can choose to start applying. However, we recommend people wait till they get their admission decision from Marquette. So we have a parent application for students who are going to be brand new to Marquette, so first-time college students. And then there is also a student application as well. If you are a transfer student, you just have to fill out the student application. Our documentation process, while we loved having neuropsych evals, if we can have them, they're not necessarily required. We'll look at an IEP, we'll look at a 504 plan. Our documentation requirements are different than the Disability Services Office, which we help people also navigate and help them figure out that process too. After we get the application, we'll invite students in for an interview. And our interview is really to see if it's a good fit. Are our services the right amount? Would they be too much? Would they not be sufficient based on the student support need? And really just kind of get to know the student outside of what maybe their parent may be advocating for, and really listen to what the student wants and the student's hoping to get out of the program. After that, we'll send our decisions, and then welcome to the party. We'll go from there.
What types of academic supports do you provide to On Your Marq students?
So from the academic support, the first thing we offer is our executive functioning coaching, which students have at least once a week. Sometimes we break them up into 2 sessions, depending on what that student needs for that time. In addition to that, we also, like I said, offer that tutoring one-on-one with students, and also we have study tables, and that's just kind of a place where students can come in and do homework. We have drop-in tutoring available during that same time for writing and math for students who need help with that. It also kind of covers some of the gen ed classes, because a lot of it is that writing or just kind of planning that part out. We also help students figure out what classes might make sense for them in support with their academic advisor too. So that's the academic stuff kind of in a nutshell. The social support has like two forms. So one is with our staff from our mental health counseling program to kind of talk about some of those more challenging social things that might happen that you might not feel comfortable talking to a peer mentor about, and also kind of managing some of the, maybe if there's emotional regulation, or maybe there's just that, like just sadness if something didn't go the way you wanted to, or something went really well and you want to celebrate that. And so those are also weekly sessions with our staff. And then also our peer mentors that have more of that less structured, but meant to be that genuine peer connection. So once a week, our students meet with their peer mentors. We also offer social events within group and outside of group, where we'll have, for example, say a peer mentor say, I'm going to go to our late night Marquette activity this week. If anyone wants to join me, or if you should come join me, meet me at this time. Or they'll do group dinners, or they'll say, I'm going to go to the basketball game. I'm going to start walking this time. Meet me. You're welcome to come. What I think is really important is that those peer connections aren't just within group. We also are connecting students to the campus at large, because the number one thing I want our students to remember is that, like, you are a Marquette student, not an On Your Marq student. You are at Marquette, and part of Marquette is that you're with On Your Marq.
How about supporting student mental health?
And so then the mental health support, again, with our mental health counseling interns once a week, and that's where students can come and talk about anything that's not directly related to executive function or not directly related to grades. It's just a place to come and talk to somebody. You don't have to have a diagnosis of any kind of mental health impairment or mental health disorder. We are just there for someone to talk to about how your week is going. Sometimes things sneak up on us. Sometimes we had a really crummy day and we want someone just to talk to. We are not designed to necessarily do like intensive mental health. We are designed to kind of just maintain that baseline of how are things going. Things are going well, and kind of keeping an eye on students who might have higher risk of depression or might have higher risk of their other co-occurring disorders. Helping students navigate thinking about where they want to live when they graduate. But beyond that, also thinking about when you're coming to campus, what are those things that you didn't realize you were getting support in that you now don't have support in? Like, for example, if your parents were putting out your medication every day, or in my case, my husband puts out my toothbrush and I remember to brush my teeth, right? Thinking about those things that we didn't realize we were getting support in, and how do we help navigate those big changes that we didn't know were going to be until we got there. So that's just kind of that initial transition in. And then thinking about when we're moving into apartments our junior, senior year, what does that look like? What kind of housing is correct for me? What kind of location do you want to be in? What does that budgeting process look like? And beyond that, thinking bigger about when I'm going to graduate, what things do I want to have near me? What kind of pieces do I need, and what kind of supports am I going to need? It's more, as we're moving towards graduation, that adulting 101. So thinking about benefits, thinking about job selection, thinking about really what it's going to be like to live fully independently. Maybe some students are going to move home with parents so they can save money to invest in properties, or maybe some students are going to move right straight out. Either way, we want to make sure students have all the resources, all supports they need to do that.
What types of housing options are available to your students?
So Marquette students in general are required to live on campus their first 2 years, unless there's an exception. So sometimes students who might live in the Milwaukee area might have an exception to that. But typically students live in the residence halls for the first 2 years. And then that junior, senior year, most students move off campus. What I like about Marquette is that we have some university-owned apartments that kind of act like a step down from the res halls, but also not quite being launched into like a privately owned apartment. So the rent is managed still through the university. There's also not an RA, but there's also kind of some building staff in there to also provide some support, as well as there's options to have even if you want the full meal plan or like partial meal plan. It's been a nice kind of transition for students there. A lot of people will ask about single room accommodations. I've seen it be successful both ways. I've seen some very, very successful roommate situations, and I've seen some students who really would benefit from having a single room. We really help students and families navigate that process. Another thing that I really like is that if students want to stay in their same room from their freshman year to their sophomore year, we are pretty good at helping students be able to maintain that room so they don't have to learn how to navigate campus again from a new location. Junior and senior year, we really do help students find the location for wherever that apartment might be that makes the most sense for them.
Can you please talk about academic accommodations at Marquette?
I report to the Director of Disability Services at Marquette. We strongly encourage our students to utilize accommodations based on what makes sense but bigger than that, we help students kind of prepare for those meetings and think about generally think about what was helpful in high school and what might be helpful in college. We help them navigate the process in terms of once they've gotten their accommodation, of making sure they are distributing those letters appropriately and helping them navigate that process of arranging testing if they have testing accommodations. If they have note-taking accommodations, we use a software and we help students learn how to use that software. Sometimes there are things that come up and students will say, oh no, I don't think I need that accommodation. But in learning about it, maybe can we reconsider this and talk about this? What I really like about Marquette's disability office is that interactive process really is interactive. And they always remind students that just because you had your meeting today, if as you're going through and you have a different type of class and your disability is impacting you in a different way, you can always come back and again, have another meeting and think about an accommodation that might make more sense for you.
How do you handle situations when a student is struggling with a professor or a roommate or an RA?
So first things, I like to empower students to have as much control of those conversations as possible. So sometimes there's been some tough housing situations, which can happen to anybody. And I'll step in and kind of talk to them and say, hey, here's what we noticed. What do we need to do to move forward? I will say the professors here at Marquette have been pretty great. And so I haven't really had to step in terms of like someone not doing something right or someone feeling like they've been offended. It's more helping students communicate what their actual questions are to professors, or if there's been like some kind of confusion or miscommunication, helping clear that up once the students have kind of tried on their own. My number one thing is that a lot of students haven't had a voice for themselves for most of their education. I really want students to start developing that now, because this is really the time, because once you graduate college, then you're not completely on your own, but without having those skills to speak for yourself and advocate for yourself, there's not going to be as many people there to do it for you.
And how about communications with parents?
So I send out basic emails at the midterm and end of term that I always communicate with the student on as well. So usually it's saying, hey, great job, everything's going really well. If there's some things that were concerning, I will also say, hey, we should schedule a meeting with your student and you to kind of talk about this. I also say that I'm open to having communication with parents as long as a student is included in that communication. I think where it gets kind of muddy is if when a student is in session with us and then parents are also then trying to do the job that we're doing in terms of helping students with executive functioning skills, it gets confusing for the student on who to listen, on what to do and who to follow. So our biggest thing is that we are a team and we are all working together to support the student, not confuse the student. That said, there are, of course, times when maybe it's something the staff needs to know, our program needs to know, that the student doesn't necessarily need to be included on. Some things like there might be a family emergency or something else. We do, aside from the FERPA piece, we also include a release that students can choose to sign that let us talk to parents. However, for me, that's limited. For us, that's limited to what the student is okay with us talking to. I will always talk to the student first before I talk to a parent, or if a parent emails me and doesn't include the student, I will definitely reach out to the student and say, hey, I want to let you know your parent reached out. Here's some questions I have. How do you want us to respond to this? 9 times out of 10, it's because the students are doing student things and not sharing with their parents everything the parent wants to know. I know that as a parent myself. But we also just want to give students that dignity of that privacy of being an adult and being able to manage that information, and kind of giving them some coaching on, if you know your parent's going to ask these questions, how can you better answer the questions your parents are asking you when you think you provided this information already.
And how about career coaching?
So we actually started career development that second semester freshman year. And that is the first part of making sure students are in, I shouldn't say making sure, but giving some of those initial kind of assessments to figure out I know I really like this, but what would that be like to do as a job when I have to do it in a certain way? Some students, I mean, I changed my major 6 times and still I turned out okay. But really helping students figure out so they don't have to do that, my path, making sure they're in the right major, figuring out what their career path could potentially look like that second semester of freshman year, and that sophomore year, taking that next step and thinking about, are we in, like, what class are we taking? What experiences can we build in? And starting to kind of interview for some internships or even doing those informational interviews. And then by junior year, we really want those internships or lab experiences, whatever that, based on your path, what that might look like. And then part of that is obviously building in that interview support, building in how do we have an elevator pitch that we're ready to go when we are doing those networking things, explicitly talking about networking and how those social interactions and social thinking looks different than friendship, and how some of those unspoken rules at work is what kind of gets us tripped up in maintaining employment. So really some very deliberate education and support in those areas, and in helping students identify not just what they want to do, but where it might be the best fit for them.
And how much does the On Your Marq program currently cost?
So our current cost for our program is $4,000 a semester. That said, we operate on a sliding scale fee because we never want the ability to pay to be a reason why a family or a student can't access the supports. I would say the vast majority of our students stay in our program all 4 years. We do ask for a year-long commitment, so that because we staff based on enrollment based on for the entire year. About midterm spring semester, we ask students if they're going to return. I really think the students see the benefit in how the program grows with them, which is what our goal, what we were intended to do, is not be something students outgrow, but something that grows alongside students. So some students start working on their master's degree their junior year, and then they'll continue with our program to earn their master's. We've also have started working with students who are just master's degree students at Marquette, or professional degree seeking students at Marquette too. And while that support might look different, it still is a learning curve going from the undergraduate level to the graduate level. We have our first PhD student starting this fall who's been supporting for a while. And I think we're just how it's looking right now is just supporting that initial transition semester for that student, so that they just kind of understand what that might look like. But really our goal is supporting those transitions that happen, whether coming into college or going out of college or going into graduate programs.
What's the most significant change that students experience moving from high school to college?
I think one of the biggest changes for students is how higher education is structured. So in a lot of K-12 settings, the responsibility of learning the material isn't necessarily on the student. It's more on the teacher to keep trying and trying and trying until the student understands the material. And the way college is, or universities are kind of designed, is the reason it's 3 credits of class is because outside of that class, your job is then to learn that material. Not saying that professors aren't available for support or for questions, but really there's a lot of responsibility on you mastering the material that's maybe been talked about in class for 20-30 minutes, and then going home and doing the additional readings, doing those homeworks, so that you understand the material, and doing that first before you show up at the professor's office and saying, hey, I don't get this, without kind of having done that individual work first. I also think what some students who have never had to study, because it's the idea of the teacher tells me exactly what to do and I do that back and then I get an A. Whereas in college, there's a lot of taking that information and making new things from that information. And the intention of the assignment is to be deliberately vague, because they want to see what you can do with that new information, rather than giving a very prescriptive assignment. And that's a big change for every student, especially for neurodivergent students who really regimented way of doing things. So we kind of help students look at those assignments, look at the rubrics, and looking at what this kind of expectations might be. We also tell them how to utilize those resources that the professor may have already provided, and really preparing for those meetings with professors if they need to do those too.
What advice do you have for parents of high schoolers preparing for college?
My number one thing for students is experiencing the dignity of failure. I'm not saying let your kids, roam like feral children in the wilderness. But there's something about not waking your kid up for school in the morning because they didn't listen to their alarm. And then as a result, they might be late. There's something to, if your student didn't turn something in, you reaching out to the teacher and saying, oh, no, they need extra time for this. And helping student, really empowering students and saying, oh, well, what do you think you could do about that, instead of rushing in to rescue them from that. Students who have never experienced hardship or not being able to navigate some of those challenges themselves are also at a disadvantage, whether they're neurotypical or neurodivergent, right? So the dignity of failure is something that I'm also super passionate about too, and not letting students kind of figure some things out for themselves and what's going to work best while being supportive in that process.
Are there particular skills that successful students develop during their time at Marquette?
I think where I've seen the most success is students who are able to kind of tap into some of that cognitive flexibility, which can also be a challenge of saying, okay, in this situation, this worked. It might potentially work in this other situation, but it might not. I think students, that's kind of very vague, but students who are able to take strategies of that time management, that prioritization, that self-advocacy skills, and get support in transitioning them from the classroom to an internship site. But really taking those skills that seem like they only exist in school and applying them into the real, like their lives outside of just the classroom. I think that has made for some of the most successful students, rather than just compartmentalizing, these are the skills I use just for school or just with On Your Marq, and taking those strategies and applying them in their social life, in their professional building.
Is there a particular student success story you'd like to highlight?
I had a student who graduated recently, and when they came on campus, really the transition was really rough. I laid on the floor of their res hall for a few hours while they cried, getting them ready to fight through the anxiety and make it to class. I think a couple of things were like, I need to graduate early so that I never have to come back to college again. And then the student went on to have multiple internships in our city hall with different government positions. So starting with older people up through our mayor's office, did a couple internships in private sector, and then added a second degree to their first degree, still graduating on time, and now is gainfully employed with a state agency in their hometown, which I thought, had you told me that when they started, I'd been like, absolutely not. Oh, they also studied abroad, which I was just like, okay, you have come so far from that new adults to now. In those 4 years, I want to cry. Like, it was just it was so amazing. And everyone's asked, well, what did you do? I was like, it wasn't, I don't even think it was me. I think we provided a place for that student to be able to try things on and thrive, and then maybe sometimes stumble, and being able to, in a non-judgmental way, be supported to try again. And I think that's what's super important, and one of the favorite things I get to do.
A big thanks to Emily Raclaw and the On Your Marq program at Marquette University. For more information on Your Marq, visit the URL below. And remember to subscribe to Inclusive Academia if you want more great content like this.